Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
What do you think then are some of the takeaways from the Civil War that we can apply to today? Because some would say we're kind of on the brink, of I don't know if it's a civil war or if it's just greater unrest.
Yeah.
What are some of the lessons that, looking back on the Civil War, that we can apply to today?
I think one of the greatest virtues in life is compromise. And when you say that, people think of like moral compromise, where you're like compromising your ideals. But I'm not in that, and not in that sense. But in the sense that we are all tragedians, especially in a political way, where every situation is not entirely good. And I know the Civil War was fought. It was fought because they failed to compromise on both sides. That the South failed to compromise, and the North, the abolitionists, failed to compromise as well. And it made it worse. It made it a terrible thing. And so, yeah, I think one of the greatest virtues in life is compromising in a lot of ways, and knowing that every choice you make is a tragedy. It's hard. It's so hard to try to put words to that idea, but it's what I'm saying is, I think, like with the Apostle Paul talking about the injustice in the Roman Empire and talking about like people in the early church being slaves, and knowing that like he could have made like this like violent abolitionist movement where they started killing slave masters and all that kind of stuff for a righteous cause, but he saw in light of the gospel that God was working in a different way. Mm-hmm. And that God works in this slow way, person to person, in living rooms, and that the Roman Empire was eventually destroyed, but it wasn't. And so, this anti-revolutionary sense is what I'm saying, of this slow kind of trust in what God's doing, and not having to take up arms to change the world so greatly and so quickly. Because as we see in the 20th century, with so many things that happened, like with a lot of the totalitarian regimes, it was for good things. They wanted to make the world a better place, but taking that means from God's hands to theirs created hell on earth. It was the opposite of what they thought. They were trying to create heaven on earth. They created hell on earth. And so I think it gives us a trust in God. So there's that one thing. And then the other thing was the picture, taking the hearts of the veterans that fought in the war and bringing it upon ourselves, to where, as I said, like the enemies embracing each other as brothers, hugging each other as brothers. And that being the case, that unity, man, it's so, everybody wants that though. That sounds great, but it's so much more complicated than that. But I think, I think it's a faith in this American experiment, in knowing that we're doing good things, are happening, and God's working, and it's by His grace. It's not that we deserve it, but He's working. Even through the Civil War, He worked in tremendous ways. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, those are strong points, man, and I think they're super relevant for today. And it's one of the things that it's sad to see happening when we disagree on secondary and third-area issues now. Yeah. We make such a big deal about it, and we hurt people and kill people based on like secondary and third-area opinions. Yeah. I mean, that's what it is at that point. It's opinions. So it is this lack of compromise. It's my way or the highway, and it's on all sides.
Yeah.
And
that compromise comes from Christianity, where you was like, wow, like I'm a sinner. Like the evil and the justice world is actually in my heart as well.
Exactly.
Right? And so how could I be the savior of the world in that sense, when the problem of the world is actually ingrained inside of me as well in some way? And if anybody's honest with themselves, they know that. Right? So if that's true, there's this introspective aspect to it that's always been part of like the Judeo-Christian West, and that's what the product of abolition, the product of women's suffrage, all that kind of stuff, civil rights, it all came from that. It's seeing like, wow, like God's working, and we're not living up to the ideals that God has given us. And the reason why we can now is because of His grace, not his his law. It's because of the grace itself.
Yeah. I didn't know that the Bible Belt was sort of born out of the Civil War.
Yeah.
That was new to me.
Yeah. I mean, it was obviously the revivals, but I mean, you think about every man had something to do with the Civil War after the Civil War in the South. And so then it became the Bible Belt. So yeah, it was a big deal part of it.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah. And it's good to hear some of those individual stories like Jeb, and to see like there was guys, it's just not as black and white as good versus bad, the right side versus the wrong side.
Sure.
I mean, you have this man of character and integrity and honor on both sides of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be an area of concern as well. Like I've even wondered, like at what point in this country do we lose enough of that valiance and that integrity and honor and strength as a culture, where if we're really called upon to do like a World War III or something, I know at that point it's probably nuclear, right? So it's less about manpower, but still, I mean, now we're trying to look for the good men, and there aren't any, But I guess there always will be some.
Right. Yeah. If there is a civil war, it won't be someone mobilizing an army with uniforms out in the open, wanting to fight on the battlefield with honor. That's not going to happen, right?
Right.
Because that's an amazing thing that like these rebels would say, I'm going to put on an official outfit and I will fight you man to man, fair and square. Right. It will be this terrible terrorism and guerrilla warfare, and so that is a moral thing in and of itself, that someone would want to fight the way honorable men should.
Yeah. You're right.
And some of them didn't do that after the war Reconstruction. There's a lot of guerrilla forces that did all this stuff, and a lot of the big characters said, no, stop that stuff.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, thanks for talking us through that. I feel like I have a greater understanding, but more importantly, appreciation of our nation's history.
Sure.
I think it's easy with things that are going on today, particularly I think with people my age or our age, where it's sort of like, hey, we didn't have it all right when this country was founded, and America's the worst. There's sort of this anti-American sentiment.
Sure.
But when you hear these stories and understand the history, we have a lot going for us as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we do stand on the shoulders of giants, and those giants made mistakes, and they didn't always have it right. And we did make awful mistakes. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Slavery should not have been part of the founding of this country.
Yeah.
There's no question there.
Yeah. I remember there's a beautiful story, Alan, with this is like, I was on Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga, and it's a beautiful, there's a battle there, and there's cannons up there. It's a military park. And I was walking up there alone, and there was this couple that came up, and I started talking to them. They were an Indian couple. And one lived in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the other lived in Los Angeles. And they were meeting in Tennessee. They were an arranged marriage, and they're both living in America, now de facto Americans, finding out what it means to be an American. And they're at this military park of a war they have no idea what it's about. They don't have any idea why these guys fought in the real sense. And I had told them, you know what? I don't have any connection to the men that fought here. Do you know that? Like in blood. I have no connection to these men at all. And they said, are you serious? Because they looked at my skin color and they thought I was a historical American, a white American. I said, no. My family came over Ellis Island. I have no connection to these men at all. And I said, but the love of this country makes me, when I go to a battlefield, I start crying. And having this sorrow and this joy and this gratitude for these men that I don't really have any connection to. But this belief and this love I have for this great nation and what it's given to me and how God has used it to bless me so much, I said, you're a part of that too. Yeah. And I said, you have just as much connection as I do to these guys. And the only thing we need to do is to fall in love with the nation, to fall in love with its story, and to embrace its tragedies, its sin, its forgiveness, and its way forward. And I told him that, and they're these new Americans. I said, man, you can love these men that died for you just as I can. Yeah. And that was a beautiful thing. And
that's so beautiful and powerful.
Yeah, they really were receptive to that.
Yeah, and it's what's so beautiful about this country too. Mm-hmm. I think in one of the stats I was reading or seeing earlier is it accurate that in both California and Texas, the minority is actually the majority?
Yeah, I think
I believe
that's
I read
true,
that somewhere. Yeah. So, there is so many different people here from all different walks of life and from so much different, like, diverse background and from all parts of the globe, and we can come here, and that's what makes America.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the greatest thing. I hope it never, that idea that where we're all united together in some large sense with the same heart doesn't fade away. Because even like during this, the lead up to the Civil War, there's like the Know Nothing Party. There was whole political parties that almost won the presidency that were completely built on prejudice. And it wasn't the prejudice you think I'm talking about. It was prejudice of Germans, French, and like Dutch. And it was all built on racial stereotypes of other Scotch-Irish white people saying, "Oh, look at these terrible Germans flocking in here to our farmlands." And it was all based on prejudice of other white Europeans. And they almost won. And so that's always been a part of our story, but it's a weird historical context that we never talk about.
Yeah.
And so, but what I'm saying is those Germans became Americans and those things.
Yes.
And I think that can still happen. I hope and pray that it does.
Yeah, for sure. Well, dude, cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for coming by.
Yeah.
This was really great. We
Awesome.
cover everything you wanted to cover?
Yeah, I think so.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me.
We will have you back on again at some point.
All right.
Most certainly.
All right, sounds good.
All right, Sam. Thanks for coming by. Appreciate it.
Yep.
That was great, man. It was helpful.